Hello again for most of you. Well, we got through Christmas, and here I am again a few days later, just before New Year's, making a video that has been on my list for quite a while, but not till it's ready, because I really had to turn some things over and do a little research and put some things together. Because I've actually been planning to make this video for a while. And that would be, hopefully, I think, in this life, this walk, the last one on the concept, the possibility, the concept, and the explanation that this body that we inhabit actually has two spiritual entities within it. And I know that's going to sound pretty wild, but hear me out. It's nothing really blasphemous or anything that contradicts the Bible, in my opinion. If I thought it totally contradicted the Bible, I wouldn't entertain it at all. But I'm open to speculative thought. I can tell you that if you follow my channel, I've got 60 ghost stories or better that I tell of encounters that I've had. They're ongoing. I haven't told everything, honestly. I could, but you've heard quite a few of them. And I've had a lot of unanswered questions. I don't believe that all spirits are, hauntings are demonic. I don't believe that. I believe that some can be. I do believe that some of them can be. So what I'm going to cover tonight is going to include a couple Bible verses, a little bit of everything. But I found this man's account that I read. I tracked it down and found it and printed it off of his near-death. They call it NDE, near-death experience. You all know what that is. That's kind of a bad near-death. That doesn't really, because they did die. And they came back. And my brother, one of my brothers had one of those happen when he was a child. He swore by it, but he didn't talk about it much. But he did go to heaven. He died in a hospital, is what he told me. And so he had one, but he's not a guy to talk about these things. He gets very emotional a few times I've heard him talk about it, because he said it was very beautiful and he didn't want to come back, and he was angry that he had to come back. And he's had a hard life here, he has, and still does. But this has to do, I'm going to read some of that. 2 NDE stories. One I tracked down, the other I remember. I couldn't find the other. I'm going to read a couple Bible scriptures, I think, that show that it's not too far out, to say we have two spirits within us. And I'm going to talk briefly of an old psychiatrist, Carl Jung. Briefly, he kind of hit upon it himself. I'll just talk about this. So this is going to go on for a while. This will probably be a lengthy little chat. So, just warning you. Oh, on the candles, for those of you that follow my YouTube channel, hello. Those candles I made for the Christmas, they look pretty funky. Supposedly beeswax, Chinese beeswax. I will never buy that stuff again. Those candles stunk so bad and smoked. After I made the video, I threw it all out. It's either the dye or the wax itself, but it was awful. The smell they put out, I don't know. I think next time I'll just buy paraffin, or I know a man and a woman in this town that have a lot of bees. They sell a lot of honey, and I'm going to ask them if they probably sell beeswax. I'll ask them, because I'll know where it came from. So on to this story. 2 spirits within one body. It would explain a lot to me. Honestly, this explains a lot. It would answer a lot of questions. And I'm telling you, if you're looking for just Bible scripture here, I've got a couple. But I don't want to twist anything or just take all this as you will. You know, don't believe it or refute it. I'm fine with that because I'm kind of going out on a limb with this. You know, so I'm not trying to pull anybody away from their current beliefs in the scripture. Trust me. And I'm not saying I believe this 100% myself. I'm just saying I think I'm kind of leaning to believing it, and it also would explain a lot about ghosts and hauntings and such. Because this man that died, he says he went before God when he was on the other side, and God would answer any question he had. He asked him about ghosts on earth, and God told him the nature of what ghosts are on this earth. And why wouldn't I believe him? I mean, I say God spoke to me when I was 11. That's in one of my stories. I've got a lot of encounters with God. I say that I went before a friend of mine that was killed, and he talked to me about my life in heaven, and I was in heaven with him, and briefly, and all the things he said that would happen to me came to pass, what I was allowed to remember. And I claimed more recently, within the past year, that I met my mother in heaven, who passed on a year ago. A year ago, that'll be 2 years ago, pretty soon. And I firmly believe that was her, and it was legitimate. But I wasn't allowed to remember everything, just parts of it, both. And that man in his NDE explains what he learned, why that is. So I don't want to pull anybody off their foundation or even attempt to. I don't think I could. But I try to speak the truth in these, and I think a lot of you trust me in that regard. So I got to be careful what I say here. But not really. I don't have to be careful. Other than profanity, which I don't do much of, I think. So I'm just kind of going out on the speculative thin ice of speculation, and I'm going to get on with it. Now, I don't know whether to read this entire account from this man. It's quite a lot, or just get to the part to where he was with God, and God answered his question about ghosts. I think I should just read the whole thing, his entire account, and it's a lot of pages, but it's kind of big print because my eyes are kind of dim. I used to have excellent eyesight when I was younger. Excellent. When I was younger, didn't we all? Most of us. So I think I'll just read his entire account, and then I'm going to go on and cover some scriptures and some of my own thoughts on the matter. And I think you'll see that it does actually answer quite a bit. Let me wet my whistle here. All right, this man's experience happened in the year 2000. And the site, I'll give a link to the site where I get these. But I like to read these on this site, the NDERF Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. Their site's been up for about, I think, since 1999. And they probably have, for those of you that aren't aware of it, some of you probably are, they must have 6,000 stories that people submit. And a lot of them aren't even in English, but somebody's good enough to translate to English for us. So it's pretty interesting. And I don't believe everything I read on there, but I believe most of it, or at least I believe the people that tell it believe it. You know? I don't think many people will make some of this up, but sometimes I've read some of these stories that I think are pure fiction, honestly, and because they're following an agenda that they're trying to, convince Christians or something that, that sin is not sin. But most of the ones I read don't contradict anything in the Bible, any more than my stories do, my experiences. So at least I hope they don't. I'm going to read this, all right? So bear with me, hit pause, get yourself a cup of tea or whatever, because it's got a little bit of length to it. But first, before I read it, I think it's good to say that there was another near-death experience that I read on that site by a woman. And I've told this before in one of my stories on this matter, the two spirits. I'll tell it again briefly. I could not find that story, and I should have been able to. I think the person took it down, because in that story it happened like within a year that they reported it, and their mother died, and that's where this person got the information from. And it wouldn't surprise me that maybe the other family members didn't really want that up there publicly about their mother and their mother's death. So that's probably the reason that they took it down. It was sensitive and it was pretty fresh. In that story, a mother and her daughter went to the hospital for surgery. The daughter sounds like she was in her 30s, and the mother was getting up there in her years. The daughter's surgery was quite routine, and the mother's surgery was rather serious, and her health wasn't good. But their spirits were up, and they were very close to each other, and they thought it was pretty cool. They were both going to the hospital on the same day for surgery. Probably arranged that to be that way so they could be together in the recovery room. That's my understanding of it. And she said the daughter went to her surgery and she woke up in the recovery room, and her mother, who should have still been in surgery, because hers was quite extensive, was standing next to her bed looking quite well. And the daughter put it together instantly that her mother had passed on, because she didn't look that well or couldn't even stand up before the surgery. So she put it together real quick that it was her mother's spirit and her mother didn't make it. And she said that her mother told her, I don't have it to read because they took it down, but the mother told her, she said, I don't have much time before I have to go. She said, but I want to tell you something. She said, we have two spirits within our body. One stays here, it's of the earth, and the other goes on to heaven. And with that, the mother vanished. And that's not verbatim, but that's what she said. She said, we have two spirits within us, not one, but two. And one is of the earth and stays here, and the other one goes up to God, to heaven. So I couldn't find that one. And then it was about maybe 6 months later, I read this man's story, because when I read that one from the daughter, it was quite a novel idea to me. I'd never heard that before. It was completely novel, so it's kind of like, huh. I just kind of filed it away, didn't think about it much, and then I read this man's story, which I do have, and it coincides. And this man says God told him this, and I could say, oh, right, sure, but I expect people to going to believe what I say. I didn't die and go to heaven, not yet. But I've experienced God personally on this earth, and I've shared those stories. So here's this man's story, all right? It's going to go on for a few pages till he gets to the part where he asks God about ghosts on earth. What are they? The man's name is Henry. This happened in the year 2000, and he reported it in 2008 on this site. All right. These are his words, his writing. The fact of the matter is that I died. I remember feeling my heart slow down until it stopped. At that moment, my eyes closed. Not more than what seemed a second later, I could see again. It was as if I stepped through my eyelids. I sat up and was in awe at how clear everything appeared. I had worn glasses or contacts my entire life, so I was amazed at the sharpness of the room around me and the vividness of the colors. I could perceive an energy surrounding everything. The books, desk, furniture of the room all seemed to have a slight glow that radiated from them. No sooner had I noticed this than I realized that I could see 360 degrees around me. I didn't need to turn my head. I just looked and I saw. There behind me lay my body, and at that moment I realized that I had died. At the moment of realization, I saw light come from the doorway. As I stared into it, The room seemed to be blown away. Sorry. And I was in another realm. I just knew that word was coming. I'm blown away by the light. At first, all I perceived was a vast area that I knew somehow extended into infinity. The area was lighted, but the source of the illumination I couldn't see. The entire universe was of the richest, deepest dark purple I had ever seen. At that moment, I realized that all of my senses were heightened. I could hear silence. Oh, God, I've got tinnitus. Thank God it doesn't follow us, apparently. There was no noise, but I was hearing something. Perhaps it was the existence of this universe. It was alive. I was breathing, but not. Instead of air, I felt a living force flowing through me. I felt as though I was swimming in the very essence of love. As I moved through this space, I became aware of others around me. There was no one I knew, but I sensed other beings. Soon I saw them as small golden orbs of light, each separate and individual. Yet a thin thread linked them all. They extended out as far as I could see in my mind. I knew that each and every one was connected and joined with what I believed was God. And I will tell you, this man was an atheist before this experience. I won't read that. There's a lot of other material where he's asked questions and what was your religion before this? Atheist. What was it after? He's a Christian afterwards. Fortunate for him. He had a chance to come back. All right. I believe they were all joined with what I believed was God. It is important to note here that I never heard voices. Rather, words seemed to enter my mind as immediately as I perceived something. It was like a running narration in a film. I was given answers to my questions before I could even ask. Almost immediately, I knew I was not staying. This universe seemed to know my desire to understand life and the mysteries of why we are on this earth. It was going to tell me. I became aware of other voices, the orbs or other souls around me. I could hear them communicating with each other. There seemed to be cliques of orbs that were together. Little cliques, cliques in the spirit world. Sorry. I believe it. I don't just like this. They spoke to one another about their lives on earth and all they had perceived and felt. They shared not only in words, but in sharing the experience. If one orb couldn't understand, it disappeared and then it reappeared. The orb somehow went back to earth and experienced that life to further understand. I understood that here time did not exist, and these beings could manifest themselves at any time on earth they desired. It's cool. You can go back in history, go back and, if you're a historian, I've always said, I've been a lifelong lover of history. Since childhood I read history books. And I always said, God is the only true historian because he knows all of it. Everybody's thought, God's the only true historian. All right. Back to getting it through this. Where was I? I understood that here time did not exist and these beings could manifest themselves at any time on earth they desired. These orbs, or rather souls, would leave this realm, detach themselves with this universe, and return to the universe of earth.